Mother's Day is a phenomenal holiday. And I think in church, we should give honor to moms. After all, God and moms have a lot in common. You see, the Bible declares that God knows, He sees all things. He knows all things. And wherever you go and whatever you do, God always knows. And so does mom. Have you realized that? How does she know that? How did she know I went there? Maybe when you were younger and mom just knew you were up to something that was trouble. How did mom know? How does mom know everything? And in the time of need, it seems that mom has the right words to say. Moms have this innate, God-given ability just to know all things. You know, God is omniscient, so I guess that would make moms momniscient. Moms have that ability just to know everything, except one mom. One mom didn't know something that she probably should have. There was a mom who came into church, and as the ushers were sitting people in church, this mom said that she wanted to be sat in the front row. And the usher said, "No, you don't want to sit in the front row." And she said, "Yes, I do. It's Mother's Day, and I want to sit in the front row." And the usher said, "No, listen, you don't want to sit in the front row." And she said, "Why not?" And he said, "Listen, the pastor, he's really boring." Obviously, it wasn't happening at this church. And he's long-winded. Maybe it was at this church. And he just goes on and on and on. And it's Mother's Day, and listen, if you want to fall asleep or you want to doze off or maybe you just want to sneak out the back while he's still going, sit in the back. That's the best spot for you to sit at. And she looked at that usher and she said, "Do you know who I am?" And he said, "Nope." She said, "I'm the pastor's mother." He said, "Well, do you know who I am?" And she said, "No." He said, "Good," and ran away. Moms have a way of just knowing things, except that mom didn't know who that guy was. But moms have this God-given ability just to know what's going on. And on Mother's Day, we like to celebrate moms for all that moms have done in our lives. And Mother's Day is a really special day. It's the third leading holiday economically in our country. First, it's Christmas, obviously, and then Easter, and then Mother's Day. Economically, the money that we spend most for certain holidays, you know what's its last? Father's Day. That's how you know we love moms a lot. Someone at our church who works in a store said that the past week they had over $20,000 worth of sales just for flowers alone, not even plants or anything else, cards, just $20,000 at one local store just in flowers alone. We love mom, but although there's so many great things that surround this day that we call Mother's Day, a day that mothers deserve to be recognized on, the very first Mother's Day was recognized in a church in 1908. That's how Mother's Day originated. So I think it's right that we in church take a moment, take a weekend to talk about moms. But in this holiday that we celebrate moms, if we're gonna be real, transparent, and honest with each other, there are some good things about this day, but there's also some bad things that surround this holiday. You see, there's good and bad, and you can find good and bad in everything, but it's important that we focus on the good. But for example, some of the good and bad things that surround this holiday is, the good is you be texting your mom, "I love you." That's good. The bad part is when she texts you back saying, "Who is this?" Maybe it's been a little bit too long since the last time you've reached out to your mom. Or the good, texting your mom or calling her and letting her know and telling your mom, communicating to her that she's unique and special and loved, and all those kind and loving things that are from your heart. The bad part is you just copied it down in that card at the gas station from another card. Anybody ever been guilty of doing that? No one's honest in church today. I'll be honest. You see, sometimes you read a card and you're like, that's just the words that represent my heart. But the card is just ugly. And so what I'll do is I'll find a really funny card because I think funny cards are funny. And so I'll find a funny card that has something that's hilarious in it, and then I'll take one of those really meaningful cards. And I've never done this with you, Morgan, don't worry. This is never, ever, maybe a few times. But anyways, I'll take the words that are in another card, and I'll be in the store because you don't want to buy two cards. So I take the pen into the store with me, and I'm copying those words down onto this card. Anybody with me on that? No? Okay, I guess I'm alone in my church. Some of the other good things that surround this day is giving mom the one thing that she wants more than anything else in the world. That's a good thing. The bad thing is when you find out what it is, that she wants you to unblock her on social media and that you would start reading her chain emails. How many moms send chain emails like way, way, way too much? Let's be honest in church today. 3 of you, good. I'm glad I'm relating to our congregation. Apparently this message is just for me. There's good and bad. This around everything. But perhaps the greatest good and the worst bad that could ever happen to any mom on a Mother's Day throughout history was the day where a woman named Jochebed became a mother. It's for the reason that Pharaoh had decreed that all children born male would be put to death. You see, every Hebrew newborn boy would be thrown into the Nile River and be drowned by Pharaoh's soldiers. It was a way that Pharaoh was trying to control the population increase of the Hebrew people. We'll talk about that in a little bit, but now you put yourself in Jochebed's shoes. She finds out she's expecting. She already has 2 children, a boy and a girl, one of each, but they decide to keep going for number 3. Some of you would say she's crazy. Some of you would say, oh, children are the greatest blessing. But Jochebed, she finds out she's expecting, and now she's carrying this child for 9.5 months, give or take a few days, 40 weeks. She's carrying this child, wondering, am I having a boy or a girl? Now, in today's day, we wonder if we're having a boy or a girl because we want to know what we're going to name them. You know, we have to pick out the name, and the stress is surmounting as the due date is approaching closer and closer and closer. And we gotta know, we gotta find out. And so now we have ultrasounds and 3D ultrasounds to see your baby in unique and bizarre ways. And so we have those technologies now to find out what we're having at a time because you can't wait. We actually waited with Shaden to find out what we were having, my firstborn. It drove me crazy. I actually didn't want to really wait to find out. I wanted to know because I can't keep a secret. I'm not very good at holding things in and the expectation of what we'd be having. I just needed to know if I was having a girl because I needed to know if I needed to buy more ammunition and to up my arsenal of guns in my house. And so we actually didn't find out what we were having, but then we had a boy. But with our second, we wanted to know if we were having a boy or a girl because if we were having a girl, then we need to get some different things and prepare for a girl. With a boy, we just, got all the things, stroller and car seat and all the things that you would just need. But with a girl, there's other things. For you that know about girls, there's a lot more things that you have to have for a girl. And so we found out ahead of time what we were having, and we found out we were having a girl for our second child. And then when it came to our third, when we found out we were expecting our third, we were talking about, should we find out or not? It doesn't really matter because we have one boy, one girl. Should we find out? And I was thinking about it. The first, I wanted to know. But I was thinking about it. We didn't find out with Shady and I had a boy. We found out with Kaiten and we had a girl. So I said, the chances are if we don't find out, we'll have another boy. Sure enough, Brenton Jude came into the world. We had another boy. Yes. And so we found out, sometimes we don't. But in this day, there was no finding out. There was no ultrasounds. There was no technology. I mean, maybe there was some old wives' tales. How many of you think those old wives' tales work with finding out what you're having? You swing the necklace in front of the thing, and if it swings to the right, who thinks of these things? I mean, it's the weirdest thing. I mean, all these old wives' tales. I mean, the only one is, how you're carrying high, carrying low. That may be some evidence to that, but it could just be good abs too. Good abs pushing that baby low. Who knows? But in this day, Jochebed had no way of finding out what she was having. And so for 40 weeks, could you imagine the expectation knowing that if I have a girl, she lives. But if I have a boy, he dies. And going throughout your pregnancy as a mom, not knowing what you would be having. And there now she's delivering this child. And put yourself in her shoes, knowing what would take place if she births a son. What would take place to him? He would be taken and immediately drowned in the Nile River. And so she delivers her child. No doubt asks, what did I have? What is it? And she hears the words, it's a boy. No doubt in her heart, the grieving that would take place. In her mind, the thoughts that would be racing through her mind. Mother's Day for Jochebed was the greatest great. I'm having a child. But also the lowest low because it's a boy and he's going to be put to death. The greatest pro and con, the greatest good and bad, perhaps throughout all of Mother's Day history, is knowing that she became a mother, but also knowing that her son would be put to death. What do I do? Perhaps you've asked the same question. What do I do on this Mother's Day? When the enemy has made threats to destroy my children, my family, when the enemy has his plans to rob, steal, and destroy, to bring death, to drown my children in sin, what do I do? Perhaps you've asked that same question. What do I do when the enemy is set on destroying my child? I want to give you 3 principles that we can learn, not only for moms, but for anyone. When you have a son or daughter that's being destroyed by sin, or maybe it's not even a son or daughter, but perhaps you're single here. Maybe it's a family member or friend. These 3 principles can apply to every area in every relationship. But specifically for this mom, what did this mom do? 3 principles we can learn from Jochebed. This mom as an example to moms, but also to everyone. Number 1, the prospect of potential. The prospect of potential. Look at verse 2 in Exodus chapter 2 again. It says, so the woman conceived and bore a son, and when she saw that he was beautiful, a beautiful child, she hid him 3 months. Now, parents, they have a unique and amazing ability to see the prospect of potential in their children. Now, it doesn't say in our text that Moses was beautiful. We don't know that he was a beautiful baby or not, but what we do know is that when his mother saw him, she thought he was beautiful. Have you ever come in contact with a parent that has, a baby and, it's maybe not the best looking child in the world, but, with a face that only a mother could love? That's maybe what is happening with Moses here. Moses is born, but when his mother set eyes on him, she thought that he was beautiful. She saw something special in her son. She saw the potential. Now, I love how parents can always look at their kids and think that their kids are the best looking kids. We have the most beautiful looking kids in the world. No one else has kids as good as looking as our kids, people tell me all the time. And I know it's not true because I have the best looking kids in the world. But every parent thinks that their kids are the most beautiful, the best looking, the cutest. I was at a little birthday gathering last night and I was talking to some guys about my kids, and I'm starting to turn into that dad. In the 80s and 90s, the dads would pull out their wallet, and you would open the big fat leather wallet, and out would the pictures would unfold. Well, now with smartphones, we just pull out our phones, and we can show a lot more than just the 12 photos we can fit in our wallet. So I'm here showing videos and photos of my kids and how great they are. And I turned into that dad. I'm that dad of the 80s that would pull out his wallet and show everybody pictures of his kids because they're the most beautiful kids in the world. And I realized every parent thinks that their kids, because parents have a unique ability to see the prospect of potential in their children. Jochebed, the mother of Moses, saw potential in him, saw something special about him. You see, Moses wasn't yet the deliverer. Moses was just a newborn baby boy. But when she saw him, there was something important in him that caught her eye. Listen, you might think of your son, your daughter, a friend, a parent, a relationship that you have with someone, that person is too far gone. That person missed their window of opportunity. Listen, with God, people are never past the point of having potential. With God, people are never past the point of having potential. They are never too far gone for God. Now, Moses was a goner. He was as good as dead. It was commanded by Pharaoh to all of the maidens and the housewives that would help deliver the children, that they would be forced to report a birth of a male child to the authorities, and if they didn't, their life was at risk. And so a lot of people's lives would be at risk through Moses being born. But because she saw something special in her child, she could have said, he's a goner. He's done. But she saw potential in him. She could have said, why bother putting my husband's life at risk, putting my own life at risk, putting my other children's lives at risk? I already have two. Maybe I should just be content with two. This third, it's really been a heartache for me. And so maybe we don't risk all of our lives for the sake of this one child, but that's not a heart of a mother. Even when no one else sees potential in that person, a mother has the ability to see what he or she could be. And that's the type of people that God would call us to be, to see the potential in people. Now, I'm not saying that you start dating somebody or marry somebody because you see what they could become. No, you don't marry someone to change somebody. Let me tell you, it doesn't work. My wife knows that firsthand. You don't marry somebody or start dating somebody because, you know what, I'm going to be a missionary. Oh, really? What's your missions field? The dating field. I'm going to be a dating missionary, and I'm going to go and date people so that I can convert them. Listen, it doesn't work. Don't try it. But in the same regard, that when we view people, the way that we look at people, we ought to be those that see the God-given potential in their lives. And so too, as a parent, the way that we view our children ought to be in such a way that we look for the potential in their lives. We see the God-given gifts as parents. We see those things in their lives, but we need to make sure that we look for the good. We look for the potential in their lives. She looked at him, Moses, through the eyes of potential. She didn't know that Moses would be the deliverer, but she saw the potential of what God could do in his life. And so we need to be doing the same and not looking at people's lives where they're at presently, but what they could be, because people go through seasons of their lives. With our children, 2, 4, and 5, almost 6, we're at a season right now where we're waiting for the terrible twos to end in our 5-year-old, and we've already started the terrible twos at 1 with Brenen, where all 3 of them are kind of in that terrible 2 season. And so we're in that season right now as a family of learning to discipline and instruct and to guide our children. and to look for the potential. And sometimes you look at where things are at presently and you think, how did my children ever become demon possessed? We cast that out in the name of Jesus, Start taking my coat off and whipping them, Casting that out. Not really, but you know what I'm talking about. And so you wonder, the way things are presently, I don't get this, I don't see this. And you realize Jochebed, she saw a baby, but after 3 months, she recognized she couldn't keep him hidden anymore. She couldn't keep him a secret. As he grew older, his cries grew louder. She couldn't muffle him and keep him silent, and she knew that it was time. Jochebed, though, she saw something special in him. And that's what we all need to be doing. Paul told the Philippian congregation just to do that very thing in Philippians chapter 1, verse 10. He wrote this, approve the things that are excellent, that you may be sincere and without offense till the day of Christ. The word approve can be defined this way. It literally means to take note of. So that is, when you look around, we ought to be those that are taking note of the excellent things, the good things, finding the good, looking for the good in our children as parents, whether you have young children or adult children. And if you aren't yet a parent, this is a principle that you can apply to every relationship in your life. It will make things stronger, make things healthier. Your marriage relationship, your friendships, whatever relationship it is in your life, and future marriage relationships, future parenting to children relationships. Take note of these things, because we ought to be those that look for and take note of and recognize the good, the excellent, to make mention of those things and to remember those things, to write them down. See, as a parent or even a person, but especially a mom, we can use our ability to see the best in our children and the people around us, but not only the best in them, but what's the best for them. And so we need to be looking for the potential. And the second principle that we learn from Jochebed, when the enemy is set on destroying our children, no matter where they're at presently, not only look or see the prospect of potential, but number two, it requires sacrifice of self. Sacrifice of self. Jochebed put her own life at risk to save her own child. And moms give their lives for the sake of giving life. It's what moms do, and a lot of moms do really, really well. You see, moms, when they have children, if you're a mom, you know this. I'm speaking to the choir. If you're not a mom yet, then you need to know this. When you become a mom, you give up your life. And a dad too, but dads, they still have their jobs, they still have their things that they do. But a mom especially, they give up so much, really sacrifice self in every way to be the best mom they possibly can be. And when this mom heard the news that she was having a son, she was willing to sacrifice her own life for the sake of giving life to her son. You see, you need to know a little bit of background because of this decree that Pharaoh gave and why it was given. If you think about Jacob all the way back, Abraham, Isaac, Jacob, the third descendant, and the people that God chose to be his chosen people to father a nation, a promise that was given to Abraham, Isaac, then Jacob. Jacob had 12 sons that became the 12 tribes of Israel. One of Jacob's sons was a man named Joseph. Joseph, as a young boy, got himself into trouble with his brothers because he was daddy's favorite. And so the other brothers didn't like that. They ended up throwing him in a pit, eventually selling him into slavery. He went to Egypt. He was sold in slavery to Egypt. His dad thought he was dead. I'm not going to go into the whole story of Joseph, but all of that being the point that Joseph had been given a gift. He was given a gift of interpreting dreams. And so he used this gift. He saw the dreams when he was with his brothers, and then he saw the dreams when he was in prison and was able to interpret dreams for those cellmates that were around him. So when that cellmate was released back into the courts of Pharaoh, who was Pharaoh's cupbearer, he said, don't forget me. Tell him I was falsely accused. I shouldn't be in prison. And he said, I won't forget. But sure enough, he forgot. 13 years goes by. Joseph's still in jail, thinking probably I'll never get out of here. But then 13 years later, Pharaoh has a dream. And all of the wise men in Pharaoh's courts can't interpret the dream. And so then the cupbearer remembers, oh yeah, Joseph, my cellmate, my cellie, and I forgot about him. There's a guy in prison, he's probably still there. Oops. He can interpret dreams. He has this gift from God, and Pharaoh calls him out. God gives Joseph the interpretation of the dreams, the 7 years of famine that will follow 7 years of plenty. And so Joseph says in the 7 years of plenty, that Egypt will have an abundant harvest. There'll be a bumper crop every year for 7 years, but following that, there's gonna be a tremendous famine throughout all of the land. So Pharaoh says, God is obviously with you, he's giving you wisdom. I'm gonna appoint you second in command over all of Egypt. So you think the nation of Israel, Joseph, one of the 12 brothers, he's now second in command over all of Egypt. God gives him great favor for 7 years. Joseph organizes and oversees the barns, and they begin to stockpile all the abundance that they don't need. And so he saves all of that would be plenty enough for the people of Egypt for the next 7 years of famine. But in addition to that, not only it would supply the need for all of the Egyptians, but it would also be enough to sell to all the people around that area. And the people would travel from distant lands because of the famine that would have swept the land. And so now, because of the demand, if you know anything about economics, supply and demand is very high, supply is very low. So what does that do to the cost? Skyrockets it. And so Joseph now is able to sell the food to the people that are in desperate need for a very, very high price, bringing an incredible economic boom to Egypt. Pharaoh loves Joseph. He is the best right-hand man that any person could ever ask for. But then some time goes by. That Pharaoh dies, and there's a new Pharaoh. Years go on, and now the Pharaoh that is in power forgot about what Joseph once had done. It says in Exodus chapter 1, verse 12, it says this. Look at verse 12. But the more they afflicted them, the more they multiplied and grew. You see, as that Pharaoh forgot what Joseph had done, verse 8 says, there now arose a new king over Egypt who did not know Joseph. So now this new Pharaoh, as years go on, didn't know Joseph, didn't know who Joseph was, but now sees all of these Israelites, the family of Joseph, because when Joseph's brothers came, if you know the story, they came to Joseph in need, not knowing it was Joseph. They eventually found out, God reconciled their family, but Joseph, being in the position he was, he said, listen, bring dad here. Move our family here. I can take care of you guys. You guys will be well taken care of. We have plenty of food. I can watch over you guys. I can protect you guys. I love my family. Let's bring our family back together. So the 70 people of the family of the Israelites, the Jewish nation that would be just beginning through Abraham, the 70 people moved to Egypt to be under Joseph's umbrella. And now they stayed there. Several hundred years go by. And now God, as he promised, would give Abraham more descendants than the stars of the sky. So they were very fruitful. They were having lots and lots and lots of children. They were pumping babies out like there was no tomorrow. And so now this new king sees the nation of Israel being blessed. They're growing rapidly. And now he begins to fear that this nation within another nation is going to grow and overtake their nation. Of sincere fear for that king who forgot and didn't know who Joseph was and how he cared for their nation. And so because of that, he figured he would put them into slavery. So he took the entire nation and he beat them badly. He figured if he made them work so hard, making clay bricks, marching in the clay pits, and he would work them from early morning, beating them, whipping them, hard task-masking them. If he did that, then they would be so tired at night, they wouldn't have any more energy to make babies. That was his strategy. But then it says in verse 12, as we just saw, the more they afflicted, the more they multiplied and grew. The men were getting into better shape. Their abs were starting to show. Their wives were thinking, who's that hottie with a body all of a sudden? And now their families are growing more and they're having more babies. And so now Pharaoh doesn't know what to do. So he decrees, if that won't stop them, from now on, I'm going to kill every male child that's born. That will stop them from being able to multiply. Our male Egyptians will then have to take the female Jewish women, and then they will become Egyptian, and we will overtake their people, and they will become part of our nation. And so the Pharaoh decreed that very thing. But the more they were afflicted, the more they grew. And that's an important lesson for each of us. Because we think of hardships and bad things and difficult times as something negative, but God allows afflictions in our lives because he knows the more we are afflicted, the more we grow. When we go through difficult times in our lives, stretching times, hey, listen, when you're being stretched, you're gonna come out taller. It's just what happens. You're gonna grow through the stretching. And God will allow times in our lives that will stretch us so that we can grow in our relationship with him. What happens when you are experiencing something so beyond yourself, so difficult, and you know that you're in desperate need for God and something from God? I'll tell you what happens. We seek God like we've never sought him before. We're on our knees way more. We're seeking him, wanting to know him and what he has for us in this, because we know we need God. God knows what happens. Why do you think China has the fastest growing Christian church in the world? Because they are persecuted continuously, put to death. And so the people in their church don't come as just church sitting, attending, I'm just gonna be a spectator. No, they're risking their lives to gather together in the underground church. Their relationship with God literally is life or death. And so they take their relationship with God seriously. If I'm gonna have to risk my life to do this, then I'm gonna be all in. I think the reason why so much has been happening in the Christian church across our nation is because people don't take the relationship with God seriously. They stay at an infancy, carnal level in their life because they're never all in their relationship with God, because there's no cost of anything. God gives me his grace, his mercy, and blessings. I'll take that too as another resource. But because of the affliction that doesn't take place too often in becoming a Christian, I'm not saying that you're not persecuted or that there aren't difficulties in your life because of being a Christian, but it's really nothing in compared to all around the world. Christians is the number one people group that are martyred around the world. We have it so easy, but because of the afflictions that we don't have, oftentimes it keeps us in an infancy and we never grow in our relationship with God like we need to. But God knows in our own lives personally, when we go through difficulty, it's those afflictions that cause us to grow. James chapter 1 verse 2 says it this way: my brethren, count it all joy when you fall into various trials. Now that sounds like a little cuckoo, a little demented, like, I'm going through this various trial. Oh, praise you, Jesus. I'm so happy because I'm going through this horrible thing of my life. Oh, Lord, yeah, let's just be joyful about this. It sounds weird, but he's not saying to count it joy for the trials that are happening in your life, but count it joy when you go through the trials. The reason why is verse 3 says, knowing that the testing of your faith produces patience. So let the patience have its perfect work, that you may be perfect and complete, lacking nothing. God will allow us to go through things to grow us. So Pharaoh had to do something. He calls the midwives in and tells all the midwives that they need to put the babies to death. And so Jochebed hid Moses. And if she would have been caught, it would have cost her her life. She was willing, number 2, to give up her life, sacrifice of self. And that's the heart of a mother. The heart of a mother willingly to sacrifice her own life for the sake of giving life to her children. Mothers give without thought of reward. Sacrifices comfort for the sake of making her children comfortable. A mother is a personification of sacrifice. And so we see this principle, an important principle. And third, and the final point for today, is the giving to God. You see, Jochebed not only did what she could in raising Moses and protecting Moses, but there came a point where there was nothing more she could do. Look at verse 3. But when she could no longer hide him, she took an ark of bulrushes for him, dabbed it with asphalt and pitch, and put the child in it, and laid it in the reeds by the riverbank. You see, when she could no longer do what she needed to do, what she could do, when she was beyond helping Moses any further, she did the only thing that she knew she could do. She gave Moses to God. What do you do, mom, dad, friend, child, parent? What do you do, spouse, when you no longer can? Fill in your own blank. When I no longer can be this or do that or protect them or help them or advise them because they don't want to listen anymore, what do I do? It says that she made an ark. Perfect. I'm going to put my kids in a little box, lock them up, and they'll be good. Sometimes that seems like that would be the best option for some of our kids. You know, put them in a cage, put a lock on it, let them out when they're 30. But she put them in an ark. Where did she get that idea from? No doubt she remembered the story that's just a few chapters before this, but a few hundred years before her, a story of another man that God saved miraculously. When the world was drowning in its sin, that God saved another man named Noah, who God told to build an ark and to cover it in pitch and asphalt. The same exact ark that Noah built, she, with what she had and the resources she had, she built a little mini version of it, a little model, a one-man ark for Moses. And she must have thought, if God could save Noah from drowning in the world's sins, then God can save my son too from drowning in the Nile River. She even used the pitch, the same materials that Noah was instructed to use. She took that model and saw if God could do it for him, then God can do it for him. And so she took her baby to the river. Wait a minute, the river? No, not the river. Why the river? The river was where the babies were being taken by the soldiers. Go in the opposite direction, Jochebed. Go hide them somewhere else. Why would you take him to the river where all the other babies are being placed in, where the soldiers are at? Go somewhere different, but she goes to the river, the same river where the babies would be drowning, and she gives her baby to God. She literally places her child and the future destiny and fate of her child in the hands of God. Mom, dad, son, daughter, there is a world that's drowning in sin. What will keep your friend, your family member, your son, your daughter from going under? Listen, it's not your hand. There's only so far that you can take that person hand in hand. But then there comes a point where you have to take their hand and place them in the hands of God. There's only so much you can do. As Jochebed did, she still did her part. She still did what she could do, but there's only so much you can do. And then she took her baby and she gave her baby to God. And when she came to the end of what she could do, listen, she came to the beginning of what only God could do. Can you imagine the sacrifice of having to let go of your newborn baby? Imagine the sacrifice of having to let go and to let God. Do you know what it's like to carry a child for 9 months? Me neither. I've never personally birthed a baby, but I've seen what it takes place to a woman's body for 9.5 months as it begins to grow and the back begins to hurt. And all Morgan wanted to do is to lay on her stomach. I just want to lay on my stomach for 2 minutes. So I dug a hole in the sand at the beach and said, here, stick your belly in the hole. Didn't help. I thought it was helping. The sacrifices that moms go through, but then having to give that child up after all that she went through for those 9.5 months. See, people have a tendency to give in when our foundation gives out. When everything's swept away, when our foundation gives out, we give in. But I wanted to tell you today, when your foundation gives out, don't give in, give it up. Give it up to God. That we would be those people that would say, you know what, I'm not gonna give up, I'm gonna give it up to God. That we would give it to him and we would place those situations, our careers, our jobs, our 401ks, our family members, our children, our parents, our spouses, that we would take those things that are weighted on us and we would take that and we would place it in God's hands. Because when we come to the end of ourselves, we come to the beginning of what only God can do. So that we ought to be those, be that our child, our future, an ex-boyfriend, your career. God, you have your way. I'm no longer going to hold on to this in such a way where it becomes an idol in my life, but I'm placing this in your hands. Oh, Pastor, you don't understand. You don't understand my children. They're growing up now, and I've tried to talk to them about the destruction that will come in their lives, living the way that they live and doing the things that they're doing. But it seems that they're just in denial. You don't know, Pastor. I've tried to talk to my spouse about the areas that I'm having, but my spouse is just in denial about everything. Moses was in denial. And when Moses was in denial, God's hand still held him up. Your spouse, your children, that person, they're in denial. Guess what? God can still reach them there too. God can still touch them, hold them. God can when we can't. So give them up to God and let God do what he can do. When the mom, Jochebed, gave Moses up to God, God brought Moses back to her. She released him to God, and then God brings back miraculously Moses back to her in such a way where now Pharaoh's daughter says, I want to have this baby, and then says, well, should we find someone to nurse him because you haven't had a baby, you can't nurse, and so she says, yes, go find somebody, and they go and get Moses' mom, and she says, okay, I want you to take this boy and raise him, nurse him, under my protection, and you're gonna get paid for it. All the moms could say, amen. She gives Moses up, and now she gets her child back and is gonna actually get paid for the job that she doesn't normally get paid to do. Salary.com every year comes out with an annual mom salary survey in which they calculate a monetary value on the jobs that moms do. And the stay-at-home mom who works for her family in 2019, in their calculations, they took the market value of the 10 most active jobs that moms do. Moms do a lot more than that, but the 10 jobs that require most of mom's time, calculating the time that she does those jobs. And according to this theoretical compensation package, a stay-at-home mom would make, in 2019, roughly $180,000 a year annually. Listen, men, you couldn't afford her, so you just married her. That's what you did. And you see, putting a price on a mom is impossible because we know moms are priceless. But moms, you can now turn to your husband and say, I need a raise. This Jochebed, she got that raise. She got paid now to do her job that she was willing to do just to be a mom. And she gave her son to God, and God gave him back to her. I love how God works in that way. Isn't God amazing? As soon as we surrender it to God, God says, I'm going to give it back to you now, but in a bigger way, in a greater blessing. Listen, giving your child up to God is not giving up on your child. I'm going to say that again. Giving your child up to God, or whoever you want to put in that blank, your spouse, your friend, giving your child up to God is not giving up on your child, but it's when you give your child up to God, then God can intervene miraculously. Listen, don't give up on them. Give them up to God. God, they are yours. I'm giving them to you. I can't watch over them anymore. I can't protect them anymore. I can't advise them anymore. They're not listening. They are in denial about the sin in their life. They are in denial about the person that's a negative influence. They are in denial about their actions and what they're doing. They are in denial. But God, I give them over to you. I give them to you in denial. River, I let you have them, and God, we will see you bring them back miraculously in a way that only God can, even with greater blessings upon the returning of that person. God can do it. So don't give up on it. Give it up to God. Whatever it is that you want, whatever it is that you see, give it up. Well, my career, give it up. My ex-boyfriend, give him up. Whatever it may be in your life, let's give it up. Give it up to God and watch what he will do, because he has great things in store for you. Father, we thank you so much for these three important, practical principles. And Lord, I pray that we would be able to apply these three things to our lives. That we would be those that see the prospect of potential in people's lives around us. Taking note of the good things. Lord, that we would be willing to sacrifice ourselves for the sake of seeing other people come closer to Christ. It's not only what you call moms to do, but it's what you call Christians to do, because it's what you did as our example. You sacrificed yourself so that we could come closer to you. And Lord, I pray that for those things, the people, the job, the resources, whatever it may be in our life, we would do our part, but then we would give it up to you. We do our part. We do our best, but then God, we give you the rest. And Lord, when we do, we see you do only what you can do in our lives, in the lives of the people around us. So Lord, we pray today, as we just relinquish these things to you, we want to watch what you'll do, because we know that you have great things in store for each of us. And with heads bowed, eyes closed, I wonder if there's some here today that maybe there's been something that's been weighing you down. Maybe you're a mom here today and your heart is broken over a child that's maybe wayward, a prodigal son or daughter. Maybe you're in the middle of a divorce, or you've been divorced, or maybe you're separated. Maybe right now your career that you've done for so many years is failing and faltering, and you don't know what to do. But you've heard the word of God today, what we need to do, to give it to him. We do our part, but then we give it to him. And I wonder today what's weighing you down. I want to give you an opportunity, every single person that's here today, to relinquish that weight and to give it to God and to put it in the Nile. To hand it over to the Lord. There's something in your life right now. Maybe it's a job, maybe it's a person, maybe it's a relationship. There's something in your life right now that you've been holding on to and trying to make happen and work out and trying to do in your own strength, but you realize there's nothing more you can do. I want to give you an opportunity today to relinquish that and to give it to God. If that's you today, I believe there's many of us that have those things in our lives that are weighing us down, things that we need to give over to God, things that have become an idol to us because we've been obsessing over and trying to control. And God would just say, just give it to me and allow me to do what only I can do. I want to give you that opportunity now before we leave here today to relinquish those things to God. And if that's you today and you want to relinquish those things to God, whatever it may be in your own life, I want you to stand to your feet and join me as I stand before you. Right now, just stand to your feet if there's anyone here today that would say, I want to give give or take. And so we're in